Oh, it's so quiet in here. Welcome to the Monday, July 8th regular council meeting. I would like to acknowledge that we are gathering on the unceded traditional territory of what is now known as the Comox Nation, and we are always grateful for their collaboration in our governing of these lands. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Just wave your hand, Troy. Excellent. Thank you. And adoption of the regular council meeting minutes of June 24th.
Move the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor on that? All good. And reports. Heritage Alteration Permit and Development Variance Permit 2699 Dunsmuir Avenue for approval. Oh. Do we have correspondence? Oh, whoops, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm one ahead. False start. Correspondence, Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 28, request to waive fees. Does somebody want to speak to that from a staff perspective, or do you just want me to run through it?
I think that the email,
Says it all.
yeah.
Yeah, so, and I did have a chance to go and meet with Councillor Brecky, and I actually went down to the Legion and had a conversation with Rodney. And yeah, he's doing really great stuff down there. Lots of, he's got these cool markers for the veteran grave sites that he's going to put up, and they're going to do a cleanup out there. Yeah, so he just talked to us about all the things he was doing. He's also got these new stand-up tables with all the names of the veterans written on them by the same woman that did the mural outside. Looks really awesome. So I think we're just looking for a way to support them. They're basically a nonprofit that's sort of operating like a social enterprise, using the proceeds of sales to do good in the community. So there is a recommendation there, if anyone is interested in moving that.
I'll move the council refer correspondence from the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 28, request to waive fees to staff to bring back a report to council on options for financial support.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Now we are ready for the Heritage Alteration Development Permit and Development Variance Permit 2699 Dunsmuir Avenue. Yay for filling another space on the main street.
Just to get set up here.
Welcome, Seamus.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of the report this evening is to present for approval 2021-01 HAP and 2024-03 DV for 2699 Dunsmuir Avenue. So the nature of the Heritage Alteration Permit is to permit facade updates, including a new door, new color scheme, and rebuilding of an existing addition. And the Development Variance Permit is to sign standards as found in the zoning bylaw. So the applicant wishes to increase the number of signs permitted on a property from 2 to 3, and increase the number of fascia signs permitted on the property from 1 to 2. So for background, this file was presented to Council for referral to the Heritage Committee in March, and in April it was taken through the Heritage Committee, who then made recommendations on the proposal. These comments, as well as staff comments, were compiled into a letter which was sent to the applicant in May, of which the applicant implemented comments into a final submission of drawings in June. So overall, the comments from staff were very minor, looking for clarity on some zoning bylaw and heritage conservation area criteria. Some of the highlights of staff requests included retention of the mural on the west facade of the building. The applicant has agreed to keep the mural as is. Clarification of parking requirements on the property, and the applicant demonstrated that parking can be met for both uses on the property, as well as providing screening of the parking area along the adjacent property lines at the rear. As noted, the proposal was taken through the Heritage Committee in April 2024. Heritage Committee made 3 recommendations, one of which that the color scheme be open to the builder's choice. that proposed doors incorporate a large amount of glass as opposed to the solid metal door that currently exists, to which the applicant confirmed that this will be done with the amount of glass proposed for the front doors to match the existing window system to avoid it being out of context or character on the building, as well as that blade signage be considered versus flat signage on the front to allow the streetscape to be more walker friendly. So initially the applicant had only proposed the fascia sign on the top of the building and requested a hanging sign to provide some eye-level detail for pedestrians passing by. So the applicant elected to implement this, which of course had the effect of triggering an additional variance on the permit. Overall, though, the Heritage Conservation Area guidelines were met, the design is of high quality and will integrate itself well into the streetscape. Now, just looking at the development variance permit, initially as noted, there's only the facade sign variance. So the zoning bylaw only permits one fascia sign at a time. And since there's already an existing one for Dodge City Grooming, we had to vary the zoning bylaw to permit two. So on top of that, since the Heritage Committee requested that a hanging sign be implemented, that then triggered another variance as the zoning bylaw only permits two business signs on a property at one time. So as a result, there are now two variances to signage. Of course, if the business had been established in a standalone building, they would have been able to have a fascia sign and a hanging sign without the need for variances. And since the operation is within a building that already has a commercial unit, that's why we had to add these variances, is to allow both businesses to have signage. Overall, there is no concerns with the form and character of the additional signs. And as of the 2 p.m. deadline for correspondence, no comments were received from the neighboring properties. So that is it for my reports, and I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions?
I'm a neighboring property and I don't have one.
Councillor Tyrion, do you have any questions? No, that's great. I like the hanging sign. I like the two signs. I like the recessed door. Thank you. That's awesome. Sort of in fitting of the rest of the character of the street. I'm just curious. So we may in the future, or maybe potentially now, we have multiple buildings that have double occupancies, different occupancies. So each one, if they wanted to add a hanging sign, or add either a hanging sign or a fascia sign, they would have to come for a variance, yeah?
It depends, but the regulation was written before a time where multiple commercial retail units were common in a building like we see today.
Yeah.
So under the current regulatory scheme, you could see that, but
Yeah.
I know it is something that is on
On your list.
our list of things to tweak. And Courtney?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add to that if the signage was the only change happening on the property, with the new development application procedures bylaw, there could be a minor heritage alteration permit, and potentially, if a variance was required, a minor variance. So it might not need to come to council if that was all that was being done.
Okay,
In this
great.
case, the door
Also, yeah.
change meant that it wasn't a minor.
Yeah, and the rebuilding of the addition at the rear too. So there were a few different factors on this one for sure.
Okay. Okay, good to know. Thank you. There is a recommendation there. Council, if anyone is interested.
Oh yeah, I got it. The council approved it. Sorry. The council approved the Heritage Alteration Permit 2024 number 1 HAP and Development Variance Permit 2024-03 DV for the property described as Lot 9, Block 2, District Lot 21, Nelson District, Plan 522-2699, Dunsmuir Avenue.
Nice. Seconder,
Oh, Troy got me first.
Councillor Therian, thank you. And all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to Transportation Master Plan. Yay, and the crowd goes wild.
All right, I'll just, I'm not going to steal Andy's thunder tonight, but the Transportation Master Plan, which has been in the works over the past 2 years, establishes a vision and objectives based on community input. It develops recommendations for various aspects of transportation within Cumberland, including calming policies, bus stop improvements, road cross-section and intersection concepts, and actions for cycling facilities, and of course, the regional connectivity. The plan is a result of a collaborative process involving the community and community groups, technical working groups, and the consulting team to shape Cumberland's transportation network for the future. We are excited to present the plan to council this evening and happy to take questions and receive feedback on the plan. Understanding that the plan is a high-level document, not prescriptive, the hope is that the plan will be endorsed or approved by council. So at this point, I'd like to turn over to Andy Kading from Watt Consulting Group to provide an overview of the plan, including the work that went into developing the TMP and some of the tangible outcomes and other work that will need to be completed in the future.
Awesome. And are you, oh, you're here in person?
So,
Excellent.
yes.
Come on up. You're welcome to sit or stand, however you guys want to
I'll let Andy stand. I'll
do that.
Right.
Thank you for being here in the liveness. with
Thank
us.
you for having us up here and for the opportunity to work on this plan.
Cooked.
We are very excited to present this. A lot of work has gone into it. This is a point of personal pride for me, and I'm just very excited to be here. Feel free to interrupt with questions as you see fit, but I've left time for Q&A at the end, and I'll try and breeze through my slides. So let me test this. Great. Okay. Quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. Q&A at the end. Okay, so an overview of the project in general. So the purpose of this project is to provide a network that can respond to the needs of a growing community. You're going to have additional residents, services, and employment, all adding to the transportation system. And so whatever you're going to do in the future should take that into account and plan for it properly. This plan boosts the already established local economy by improving the efficiency of the village's transportation corridors. Additionally, it promotes sustainable asset management by outlining evidence-based transportation investments. And we'll talk about those as we get through the whole plan. So briefly, the outline of the plan as it was initially conceived. Phase 1, we had data collection and modeling. This included our public outreach. Phase 2, a review of best practices, both nationally and internationally. Phase 3 was the development of options and the evaluation of those. Phase 4 was the policy, standards, and recommendation section. And then Phase 5 is the costing and implementation. And all of this is wrapped up into the plan. And we'll get into all of these in detail. So, community engagement and feedback. So we had a bunch of touch points with the community. We had 2 online surveys. We had 2 separate mapping exercises, one that was in person and one that was online. We had 2 separate community events, including one where we went out and did workshops, where we actually took community members around and talked to them on the ground what's going to happen. That's pretty good. We do a lot of these things, and the community here has been absolutely, the level of engagement has been stellar, and we appreciate that. So what were the emerging themes from our first round of engagement? Well, we had general support for the proposed improvements. There was a desire for more east-west connections and opportunities. A desire to focus on the existing infrastructure before making new improvements. And safer connections within the village and out of the village as a top priority. So we took those away, thought about them, and then came back with a second round of engagement where we presented the refined version and then got more feedback. And the findings from that round of engagement were a very strong support for the plan's vision and objectives, strong support for the concept of shared streets, which we'll talk about more in a second, and we asked the community to rank different projects based on priority, and Cumberland Road and 4th Street ranked the highest. And we'll talk about the prioritization soon. So plan framework, I'm just going to breeze through this, it's all in the report. But the vision statement. So this vision statement is a future Cumberland describing itself after the implementation of this plan. So Cumberland is a thriving recreational, artistic, and climate action-oriented village supported by a transportation network that ties the community together. High levels of walkability, connected cycling network, and slow and traffic calm streets have come to define Cumberland's network. Safe and comfortable active transportation corridors allow for easy connections to community hubs, parks and green spaces, recreational opportunities, and to the community's vibrant arts and culture scene. The village's transportation network has been designed not only to prioritize safe connections to key local and regional destinations, but also has built-in climate resilience with infrastructure that facilitates low-carbon travel and is adaptable to a changing climate and severe weather events. So the plan had 6 objectives. Objective 1 was the maintenance of the existing infrastructure. Focus on the existing infrastructure before you make new facilities. So the targets that we applied for this were the continuation of fixing issues, and we sort of summed that up of trying to do a one road repaving project annually. Objective 2 was quick build and experiment with active transportation. So utilize low-cost, temporary, and quick-build materials for all new active transportation facilities. This allows for the testing of these facilities and refinement as time goes on. Outside of, in the world of transportation engineering, these materials have become very available. There's been a lot of design effort on them, and they should be used by the village rather than spending lots of money on concrete. So we say you should build one of these shared streets projects a year. You should build cycling facilities on Dunsmuir by 2029, and try and construct traffic circles, 5 of them by 2029. All very achievable. Objective 3, accessibility is a priority. So the transportation network should reflect people with accessibility issues and accommodation for vulnerable roadway users. And some examples of targets for that are the tactile indicators at all intersections. Those are those yellow plates with the dots on them for visually impaired folks. Upgrade all existing on-street parking to a higher standard for accessibility. Upgrade curb ramps to match current design practices. Objective 4, connection to key destinations and cherished assets. Make sure that these connections that are being made go to places that people want to go. So for that, some of our targets for that, upgrade Cumberland Road to a protected facility by 2029. New active transportation facilities should connect to the village park, and they should also connect to the village school. Number 5, regional connectivity. Upgrade the Cumberland Road to a protected bike facility, and then work with the CVRD to look at a broader connection, which there's been some movement on since this was written, so that's great. And then number 6, lastly, transportation decisions should follow a climate lens. So the village has targets for greenhouse gas emissions. This will help you hit those. You should shoot for 15% of all trips to work and school to be by walking and rolling. And EV charging. Introduce EV charging level 2 and 3 to certain locations. We'll talk about that's outlined in more detail in the report later. Okay, so the road network itself. That's great. We've got visions, we've got plans and objectives, but what does this actually look like in practice? So this is a new plan for a new paradigm. This is a new paradigm where more people walk and roll. This is a paradigm that respects the nuance between a street, which is where people live and people are, versus a road, which is a facility that moves vehicles. Instead of trying to, smush 2 of them together in awkward and not effective ways. So as part of that, we've revised and created new road and street classifications. We've had clarifying language about traffic control types. We've outlined intersection and crossing treatments. We've introduced traffic calming as a speed management tool. We've clarified speed limits, how fast and where, and then we've codified future roads and what those look like. So in practice, for the engineers, there is a table that gives ranges and suggestions for what these new facilities, what these revised cross-sections should look like. The details are in the report, but it outlines all manner of things. So I'm going to go over them real quickly just to give you a flavor of what it is. So the first thing to know is that this follows a traditional road hierarchy. There's an arterial, which is the big fast roads. They move into a collector, which connects to the local road, which is where people live and people are. There is an important distinction, though. The cross-sections that I'm going to show you are largely for a new Cumberland. The old part of the village, it's fairly constrained, and updating it to these standards would be impractical. What's going to happen in the old part is covered in detail in this plan. But these cross-sections that I'm going to show you today will largely guide the village as development happens over the next 20 years, or however long until the plan gets redone. So, if you're going to build a new arterial road, a main road that's, is about moving people, these are some suggestions that we have. And this shows the range that's available within the table and how that would work. So at the top, we have one that's got a treed median in the center. It's got lanes that are off to their own. The cycling and the walking are all nicely separated. On the bottom, we've got another version. We have a center turn lane here. The pedestrians there's a sidewalk on this side separated by trees. On the other side, I'm going to try not to laser point this poor person here. There's a multi-use path. So if you were to imagine a new Bevan Road, or as Bevan Road comes into the village, these would be the standards that would dictate what that road could potentially look like. For collectors, this is a vision of what we recommend. So you've got separated cycling facilities, lots of trees, and then a somewhat narrowed roadway profile, just 2 lanes instead of 3 or more. For your local roads, by the time you get down to the local road, traffic has been calmed to the point that competent adult cyclists just mix with traffic. These are calm local roads. Kids should feel safe being in them, playing hockey in the street. There's intermittent parking that can swap out with trees, and then sidewalks are generous and set aside and buffered away from traffic. 2 other standards that are sort of niche are industrial roads. Think Ulverston by the current industrial section. For this, we want to keep all active users away from where large vehicles will enter and exit. And then we have country roads, which help define the more rural areas. And there's also a standard for new laneways, too. So this is what's going to guide you into the future for your building. But what about the old part of town? And that's where the active transportation network changes come in. So the long-term network, I'm going to show a map of it, we're going to talk about it, but this is really the skeleton of the active transportation network. This connects the village to itself and to its desired destinations and to points outside of the village. It's designed for children and the elderly, so truly all ages and abilities from 8 to 80. Our design parameter that we like to use for these, and it's very, very true, is that a parent should feel safe letting their child get to school or to their friend's house by themselves. That is the level of calm that we're talking about here. And we heard that loud and clear in our community outreach. There are some larger projects, and the majority of these changes are low cost and adaptable and easy to build. So here's a map of the whole network, and we've got a little legend up here. We've got the road network. We have dedicated active transportation corridors of various types. We have shared streets, which we'll talk about in detail, priority corridors that have been prioritized, and you can see there's some overlap here where they're both, Kendall is both. And then the village's very nice network of pathways and trail connectors that link all of this together in a very cohesive way. So the active transportation corridors is defined. You can see Bevan up here. Now that's, back to that arterial roadway cross-section that we showed. That is what would define that. And that's a priority as things start building out. And then you can see that we have a lot of interconnectivity. So if you're envisioning this is how people would bike or walk across the village. These would be the first round of streets and roads that would help make those connections. The critical part of this whole scheme is the shared street network. This makes up the majority of the kilometers of active transportation changes. Shared streets serve in-village travel needs. They maintain aesthetic preferences. They maintain the rural feel of the village. They are a common form of low-volume roads in less urbanized areas, and a lot of these roads are going to operate very similar to how they do today, but with just a little bit more clarity. These are all easy to implement, low cost and adaptable, and these little active street networks kind of act as the limbs to the spines that are your Forth and your Cumberland roads and your Dunsmuirs. So here's a map of the shared street network. And we'll talk about what this looks like in a minute. We can see we've got Maryport and Ulverston. We have Ergmont. And there's a couple other north-south connections. Forth is not on there in Dunsmuir because those are larger projects that we'll talk about in a minute. So what do these actually look like? And how do you make these things happen? Basically, you're going to use a suite of low-cost treatments like this. There are a plethora of these things available, of many, many different designs. And they are all very easy to implement. These barriers have been very popular in Vancouver. They've been incredibly effective. Painted, there's street paint, these plastic ballers that you can glue down. There's a traffic circle made out of temporary materials. These Calgary curbs, as they're called, you've already got these in the village. I was very impressed to see them on 4th Street as part of that RFB that's there. There's some fun signage, which is already present in the village in a lot of different ways. And then really one of the keys is these advisory lanes, which are a concept that we've generously stolen from the Netherlands that really define streets in an interesting way. And you can see here that, there's sort of just one lane in the middle. And then there's defined areas for people biking and in some cases walking. And everybody just kind of shares the street, which is effectively how the streets operate today, but those lines on the side of the road make a lot of difference. And so here's an example of what this would look like on Maryport. So we have the advisory lane here, which defines where people walking and biking would be. And then people driving are expected to be in the middle. There's custom signage that helps explain this. And then critically, here's a traffic circle made out of a low-cost planter that comes to define the intersections. Now those really help calm traffic because you don't have any throughfares anymore. You know, stop signs do work, but these things tend to work a little bit better. They slow traffic from all angles. And you know, you can run a stop sign pretty easy, but it's hard to run one of these. So when you're coming into one of these streets, there's a gateway treatment that we're recommending that helps define the space for the people who are entering it. And it looks a little bit like this. I'll zoom in. This version has space. This is a technically accurate version where 2 cars need to have enough space to navigate it. Like if you're turning off a 4th and somebody's trying to turn off also, you would pull in here and then go in. And so the gateway treatment, as we zoom in, consists of a couple key points. In this example, we've used a pinch point using those Vancouver curbs. We provided signage that tells you things about the road, the advisory lane signage, what speeds you're expected to drive. And then here's a bunch of accessories that can be put down. You know, you see these around the village today. Here's some of that fun signage. But there's other treatments that are available too.
Can I interrupt then? Right?
Please.
Can we go back to that? So on Maryport, everybody parks on the street
That's right.
throughout the entire village
Yep.
without driveways often. So what happens in this picture in that case?
The expectation is that they do not park on the pavement, or they limit the amount of pavement parking that they have. You're not supposed to park in the roadway itself, ideally, right? Now, what's nice about this street is that if somebody's in there, the space is flexible. It's not, you know, it doesn't have to be 100% clear at all times to make it work. You know, if somebody's intruding into that little bit, people are going to figure it out. This roadway looks different, but it actually functions almost exactly how it does today. If you're driving on this roadway and no one's on it, you drive kind of in the middle. If you meet another car that's coming, you both move over around each other and then come back in the middle. If you're walking or biking on the street, you bike to the side. These lines and the signage just help remind people or tell people what the expectation is. And the big effect is that they tend to create more respect for people walking and rolling. It's funny that a little stripe on the road and a sign would have that effect, but they work really well for this situation. Does that?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yep. We're definitely, if we can implement this kind of stuff, we'll have a lot of growing pains, but this is the future, and I like what it looks like.
Yeah, and critically too, you don't have to fix the road to do this. You can go out today and paint it. And then eventually when you get around to fixing it, you can look at, okay, maybe we need to add a sidewalk, maybe not, maybe it stays in this form. But critically, this can happen today. And striping is like very inexpensive as far as transportation projects go.
Yeah.
And it can be done almost anywhere. So outside of those quick build projects, we also have we also worked with the community to prioritize the projects. And you'll notice that Maryport is ranked as number 1, Kendall is ranked as number 2, and then we have 3, 4, and 5, and 6, which I will talk about, and then Royston also. So the shared streets ones, which represent Maryport and Kendall, are, you know, we just covered those. But what about the larger projects, the critical roadways, Cumberland Road, 4th Street, and Dunsmuir? So this is our vision for what Dunsmuir could be. This is actually a pretty simple change. You just swap the bike lanes and the parking location and then add some definition to them. It doesn't have to be green paint the whole way. That's just, you know, for visual clarity.
I've got my own comment. Why did it take 4 times?
Not a
It's
question,
okay,
I
it's
take
our
it.
counselor
Yeah,
who's
okay.
on Zoom.
That's good. What's really neat about this swap is that it turns out there's actually some interesting little places that can get made at the corners because there's a little bit of leftover space that defines the parking area and also needs to have a pedestrian passageway. So those are really neat placemaking opportunities. You can put in benches, you can put in street trees, vegetation, bike parking, other things can go in there. This design fully accommodates the existing patios. You'll have to have a little crossing, but lots of cities do this already, so there's lots of design criteria for it. So in total, this is a pretty easy change. This assumes the curb lines don't move. You have to redo the corners because there's bulb outs there, but it's surprisingly low-hanging for touching what is the village's main street. Oh, okay. There we go. Cool. For 4th Street, this is probably the most significant project in terms of change. There is enough right-of-way for this scheme, protected bike lanes on the side, sidewalks on both sides, and a redone roadway. So that would be transformational and would act as a spine that helps link all of the other shared streets into this. For Cumberland Road, the change is very simple. Basically clean up the edges where asphalt needs to be added and then add in these concrete curbs. Lots of cities are using these things. They're inexpensive to install and they're easy to obtain. It would provide a level of protection on Cumberland Road, which would be nice. It'd be an easy win. And ideally, you can work with the CVRD to help facilitate one continuous connection into Courtney and Comox. The last one I'll chat about is Comox Lake Road, which is a pretty neat one. So in this version, we standardize the parking configuration, get it out of the roadway and a little more, refined. And then we add in a multi-use path on the side, which goes to an undetermined length. So that gives people a place to walk and a connection to the lake itself. I'll pause there for any questions before I roll into the policy changes. Okay, great. So to make this all happen, there's some policy changes that are needed. This is outlined in the report. You have to amend your street and traffic bylaws to allow these new types of treatments, subdivision bylaw to update the changes in the TMP. And then there's some supplemental standards that we recommend, BC Active Transportation Design Guide, service bylaw, to specifically talk about streets and roads, street lighting standard, et cetera, et cetera. Another notable policy that's being recommended is a traffic calming policy. People often call city halls with questions about or concerns about traffic and it generally being too fast or issues. This gives you a framework for dealing with that and addressing it. And then there's two other policies three I want to talk about. Transit policy. This is largely to follow the Comox Valley Transit Future Action Plan. We also recommend working with BC Transit on on-demand transit. Smaller areas that aren't very dense can have problems with an established transit service. It's hard to run a bus every hour or every half an hour to make it really worth it. But on-demand transit, something that's emerging, and the village could be a very good case for that. And then, of course, just standard bus stop improvements. Parking policy and management, we're recommending that you update private parking, public parking, and undertake a biannual parking count to understand what the parking demand and needs actually are. The changes in parking for private and public generally reflect adoption of accessibility standards. So those are van accessible spots, wider spots, designated spots, etc. And then we have an electric mobility policy, which is just getting the village ready for the coming EV revolution. This applies to electric vehicles, bikes, scooters, and as an accessible parking requirement as well. And then we also make some recommendations about new developments and accommodation of e-bikes. So then we get into how you should implement this. So we talked about some of the high dollar, the high dollar ones, which are the biggest ones. For these, you're going to need outside funding help. BC Active Transportation grants are a great thing for this. The village is perfect for it. You got the right size, the right mentality, and here's our cost estimates for these changes, which are not terrible for, especially for Cumberland Road for how long it is. It's pretty good. How do you prioritize this? What's the criteria? Number one is community support, then alignment with regional active transportation networks, connection to schools and key destinations, and then quick build and cost effective. Short-term priority projects, the prioritization of the shared street network, because that's low-hanging fruit and easy to do, and then work on the bigger ones one at a time until you can secure funding and kind of make it happen. And that is it. So I'll take any questions.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes.
Questions? Who wants to start?
Sure.
Go for it, Councillor.
Thank you very much. We've been waiting for this one. Okay, well, I've got a couple things jotted down. I love the tactile indicators, the 5 roundabouts, the higher standards of accessible parking, and the upgrade of Cumberland Road before 2029. I think that's a fantastic idea. very lofty goals, but we have to have a roadmap to be able to get there. So this report will provide that map. So I'm very grateful for that. It obviously is going to cost a lot. I've kind of broken up some of those things and ideas. I know that we're going to have to get a lot of grants coming up for just about everything. So yeah, I'm curious about the Union Road extension. I'm not sure we've ever heard about that. I read that in the report. Do you have any comments about that? It's kind of like left field, but it was in the report, and I'm not sure that I've ever read anything about it. But
Yeah, it was something that was developed through the mayor. Sorry, it was developed through the work that was done for the Bevan land strategy. So it was one of the concepts of redirecting industrial, commercial type traffic around that way, and it's a brushstroke on a map is what it's intended to be. It's future transportation network type planning. That's all it is. The exact route, to be determined in future years.
right,
But it's really to get a lot of that traffic off of Cumberland Road and Bevan Road in and around the residential area. So that's the thought there.
when we build that, will they also help us pay for that again? Because they help already pay for the Bevan Road for those at home.
Yeah.
So the CVRD has already helped pay for one road out to there. So
Or maybe it could be a DCC project
Right,
as
right.
well. So yeah, we'll have to look at that further.
okay, thanks. I did not know the term dooring. That is news to me.
yeah.
That's good to know.
That's a
I've
thing.
known it my whole life, the concept, but that was good to put a term to that. I really like the Cumberland Road. I like the low-hanging fruit stuff. It does actually seem possible. The through fare through Maryport, with all that angle parking, I really struggle to see that come to fruition because there's certainly a lot of cars on that road and it's pretty skinny, but I like the idea. And if you start painting lines and telling people stuff, maybe some of that can change. Yeah, I really, really like the report. I just hope we can find the money. So thanks very much. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Councillor.
Before I go first.
Oh, wait, sorry. Flex stakes. I've been
Flex-
talking about
yes,
flex
they're in
stakes for
there.
5 years. I'm happy to see this in the report. I see them in town now. I'm sad that we don't have them in our village that I've been asking for
Soon.
5 years,
Soon.
but I assume that they'll be coming because of the report. Sorry, thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Tyrion.
Had to add that.
Oh, hi, thank you, guys. Yeah, love this report. Love almost everything in it. I think a lot of this is going to make a really big difference to just making the town a safer place to walk and roll around. I've just got a couple of questions, probably for Rob. This, as part of the 4th Street, Cumberland Road, it all kind of connects at 3rd Street. And there's a circle design there. And then that circle, I understand, is part of the, is supposed to be paid for through the CDA that we have with Cole Valley when it reaches a certain size. So do we have to put sort of like this all together at the same time? Or how do we cost this out as we're looking for grants and things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to answer your question, you really need to know what, at least from a concept level, what that traffic circle looks like and the impacts it's going to have.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, I think, stop us from developing a concept for Cumberland and 4th Street that we can then reach out to, the BC Active Travel Grant people or other funding opportunities to look for funding, because that's going to take some time to develop the concept and then go through the actual funding application. So, but it is timing dependent on Cole Valley for sure.
Okay, yeah, just as part of being shovel ready, so that if a lot of these grants want us to be shovel ready, so being able to figure out how we're going to tie this all in and not be, building something and then tearing it up again immediately to build something better. Just to piggyback a little bit on Councillor Sullivan's comments, that road, the extension of Union Road there also looks like it goes through the same tunnel as the CVRD has flagged up as our route for our active transportation network. And I'm not sure having garbage trucks and bikes trying to share the same little tunnel is going to be where we want to be. So some more thought is definitely going to have to go into that. Couple other little random points. How do those pinch points, they're set back a ways so that traffic can get in and out from the road? I see you nodding. Okay, yes, thank you. And then how I know they're sort of pioneered in Vancouver, and Vancouver doesn't do a lot of snow clearing. How do they work with snow clearing? Are they going to be a bit of a nightmare when we get a sudden foot of snow overnight?
I'll tackle that one. I think it'll be similar to the Calgary curbs that we have along 4th Street. So we actually went out with a crew and did a practice run with a plow truck to make sure the crew understood, how close they could get to those curbs and, to slow down and not destroy them. So it's really just working with the crew on a revised snow clearing practice on those streets.
Okay, thank you. And then I just wanted to, I see that, and Vicky's probably going to speak to this some more here in a minute, that Camp Road is not included as one of our priorities. But I would like to see like one of these pinch points or a planter or something sooner rather than later at the end of Camp Road. And then if that is part of our shared street network, shouldn't we be looking at our Comox Lake Road sort of continuing off the end of Camp Road? I know we need a little bit more parking down by the Yellow Gate, but as far as putting in pathways and shared multi-use paths, continuing them from the, getting more mileage for our dollar by continuing them off the end of Camp Road rather than sort of duplicating effort all the way down there. Yeah. Oh, one last thing. I didn't see car co-ops mentioned anywhere in here. I mean, I saw it as a sticker somewhere in the plan, but is there any thought to talking with future developers and having them put in car shares as part of development? I know the development that went in up near the hospital did this. They, as part of their development, they got away with much less parking in their development because they agreed to put in a bunch of shared cars for their residents that will then hopefully become part of a wider network once Modo or Evo or somebody else moves into the valley.
Yeah, they're not mentioned in the report specifically. You're certainly not prohibited from doing them. It'll be a while until you get a formal car share like a Moto or an Evo. That's even Colwood doesn't have them. So, the market conditions have to be very particular for it. But it's something that we recommend is TDM or travel demand management. That's the way they got away with less parking is they said, okay, we'll have this car share so we don't need as much parking.
So we could offer it as a, like we have right now cash in lieu, but we could have co-op in lieu or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'd like to see some, having a look at that or somebody coming back with something on that at some point. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Thank you. Like I say, I love almost all of this.
Just nerding out all over the place. Go ahead, Councillor Brecky.
All right. I'll bring up just, I don't think we quite touched on, the one thing I was wondering is just the bike lanes and snow clearing capacity, especially going out along Cumberland Road. Is that something, I know we've got some equipment for doing that. Do we have the capacity to be able to manage that?
It's easy to manage some of those areas now because there is no protected bike lanes. But as soon as you start adding delineators, raised barriers, whatever it
Yeah.
is, then you need other equipment and you need more resources. So it's something we'll have to consider as we put budgets together and prioritize future projects. So what the implications are, definitely.
I like them very much. I think they work, and especially from a safety component. If you don't have that, it's pretty easy to wander over the line. But people definitely don't hit a solid barrier, or if they do, they maybe shouldn't be on the road at that point. A couple things. I really like the complaint process here for traffic calming policy. I noticed a lot of people do want speed bumps. Can you comment on? I like the door effect for the streets. I can see that happening. I still, everyone wants me to talk about speed bumps to the rest of council. So could you maybe touch on that for a second?
Yeah, so speed humps are just one tool out of many. They didn't make it in the slide, and they're not talked about a lot in the report, but they are something that's, you can absolutely do. They work in certain contexts. They have to be the right speed bump or hump in the right place, in the right condition. They do affect emergency response times, fire trucks, although maybe not as much of an issue here because I don't think you have big, 100-foot long ladder trucks here. But they can be problematic for emergency vehicles. There's special designs that have wheel segments for them to go through.
Okay.
So, the other issue with them, which is horrible, but there's actually some modern SUVs have special programming that allows the suspension to be adjusted to negate the effects of the speed hump. Like you can buy this in a new Range Rover, right? And large suspension pickup trucks aren't really affected by them. I got them on where I live. There's speed humps on a hill going down, and people blast through them all day long.
Okay.
So it's not that you can't do them. It's that what I would say is that they're one element of a suite of tools, and the suite of tools together is what will change behavior.
So you find, I love the design. It looks a lot nicer. I also tend to find people speed between the two.
Yeah, that definitely happens.
Yeah, and then hit the brakes, which isn't good for the environment either. I mean, you're using way more gas or so. But
Yeah.
no, so I really like the door effect you called it. So
Oh, the gateway?
the gateway, yeah.
Yeah. You gotta give people information about how you expect them to behave. In the absence of information, people do what they think they should. But if you have something that you want specifically to happen, you have to give people that information. And so that gateway is a really great way to do that.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity for the community to beautify things too. Those are all, they can be accessorized in any manner of creative way.
Yeah.
So.
I like the speed guidelines for the various road types as well. That was well done.
Thank you. I want to emphasize on those. Those are maximum recommended. They are
Yeah.
not the recommended speed.
Yeah.
So you're free to go lower.
And the last comment is just when we're reviewing this here, I think looking at the OCP, we should have it making sure that we align strongly with what is coming out of our OCP or our updated guidelines with that. Maybe we want to tweak some things, especially if there's more development out by Union Road or something like that. That might be, we might tweak a few things. So I guess it's a living document. We can always change some of the aspect of these classifications. So
Yeah, it's your document. You can amend it as you want. But yeah, making sure the OCP and the TMP match is important, and to
Yeah.
make sure that you have the funding framework in place to be able to capture dollars that'll help you make these changes, and that the two documents allow for that is critical.
yeah, but fantastic report. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Really excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I'm going to say the same thing. Really great report. It had all the good things in it. I will just mention that my only concern is with the prioritization. So I think what's happened is the prioritize happened through the consultation period for this particular report, but we've had years and years and years of complaints from Camp Road and from Kendall, and we've had zero complaints about Maryport. So I'm concerned that we're prioritizing Maryport over both Kendall and Camp Road. But I think, so I'm curious how that prioritization is going to work. Is that a budget timing thing, or is that?
And that's totally up to council. It's council's prerogative. If you want one project as a priority over another project, that's your call.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think it's important that we look also at what we've done some things on Kendall already. We've done a bunch of things on Egremont. So is it time to put some resources somewhere else and then go back to those? I think that's a further conversation. But Camp Road is definitely a dangerous situation right now. And then the other thing two things that I didn't, the corner of Cumberland Road, I think you had the barrier on there. That's a place where people cut that corner, leave it, so coming off the connector onto Cumberland Road. Is that included in this plan? Because that corner is very dangerous and that could be an easy, quick fix. So you go down the connector and then you turn left onto Cumberland Road and all the cars kind of go into the easement there, the bike lane, which becomes a bike lane further down Cumberland Road, but it's not an active bike lane there, but it's used as a bike lane. So getting that in there somehow, because that will help us too with our connector project and having that in our master. So that was my other question, is how much of that connector route or the partnership with CVRD and that Cumberland connector, how much of that needs to be in here so that we're aligned for future funding?
Well, so to answer your first question about Cumberland Road off the Parkway, I mean, it's a Ministry of Transportation initiative.
Okay.
It's their intersection, and so if people are swinging wide in the intersection into the bike lane, they might be able to put delineators like the city of Courtenay has on certain locations. Bottom of Ryan Road is a good example. Now people cut the corner into the bike lane all the time. Excuse me, and so they've put delineators on the as a physical barrier, so you can't do that anymore. So that's something we can approach the ministry with. As far as the regional connector, active transportation connection piece, it's mentioned in the plan. It's really being driven by the regional district, so I don't know that we need a lot of detail. I mean, it needs to be, there's a bunch of parties involved, including the Ministry of Transportation, so it's going to take some time to figure out what the route is and then what the design of that looks like. So I don't know that it needs to be fleshed out in any detail or mentioned any further than it is in the plan, but it is recognized for sure.
Okay, and we do have Cumberland Road to have 2 lanes on either side, so that's a piece of it. That's our piece of it.
Right.
And then, okay, so maybe that's enough. And then the other dangerous spot is coming out of the Orchard Park onto Comox Lake Road, connecting down to Disc Golf or Hand in Hand or Chinatown or wherever you're going down there. So that, I think, needs a 30-kilometer and a crosswalk, because I've been almost killed so many times on that road, because I cross it twice a day usually. And people are doing what they do on Lake Road, which is go much faster than what they're supposed to be doing. And that area is often very congested.
That's a really good catch, actually, that. Yeah.
It's that, so from the end of where Camp Road actually comes out onto Comox Lake Road from there, because people park all in there, and then back to Orchard Park, I think all needs to have some kind of, like, hey, it's a park, slow down, something.
Right at that intersection too, it kind of goes up. And so like if you got
Yeah,
speed
it's-
even from the other side, everybody's kind of going up right there too.
Yeah, I would suggest that could almost be included in whatever plan we come up with for Comox Lake Road. So, and it could be a speed reduction with a multi-use path, designated parking, and a narrowing of the street. I mean, there could be some options and some improved crossing for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And then the only other thing, I think, is the laneway. So our old laneways are 3.5 meters. The new laneways are 6.1 meters, which feels more like a road to me than a laneway. And I'm also concerned that we would be paving those laneways. So is that, what's that new laneway thing about? Is that for new developments? Is that in the existing? Like, is that what we're trying to develop for, say, the commercial area of Dunsmuir on those lanes? Because we need truck access, or like, what's that?
The new laneways are for new development. What we do in the old lanes, especially the commercial ones, I think there's some recommendations in the alleyway lane report from Weller from a few years ago. The challenge is the maintenance in some of the lanes, and what we're going to see is if we see increased development downtown, there's going to be a greater demand for rear lot access, and so there's going to have to be plowing gravel roads, clearing them of snow in the winter is challenging when it's gravel. And so some of those lanes may have to be hard surfaced, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I'm okay with the lanes in the commercial core, like on either side of Dunsmuir, potentially being paved one day just for that reason, for more commercial development down there. But I think laneways generally in our community are green spaces, they are walking paths, they are not meant for cars or deliveries or parking or any of the things that are starting to sort of spread throughout the laneways. And I don't think we want to take on plowing all our lanes either. Like I think the reason we love our lanes is because they are kind of green spaces, they're calming, they're nature spaces, and they're not heavily maintained. Like, I think that's actually what the community likes. I'm open to challenge on that, though.
I just had a follow-up. Oh, is it okay to
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
on that, because there's some laneways on there, on map page 84, I think it is there. They don't connect all the way through at the moment. There's no plans to reactivate those or, ones that have been, they've sat treed for years. You're not thinking of opening that up or anything.
No, if
Okay.
anything, they're assumed to be part of the active transportation network.
Yeah, so, okay.
Yeah, and then in regard to the width, one thing that we did for the width, and it is quite wide, is to put that in there as a recognition that perhaps during the development of Coal Valley or in future developments, there will be a development that will be geographically constrained, such that putting a road in front of the homes or whatever is going to go there would be problematic. You could allow rear access, so the home is close to the geographic or to the topographical issue, and then the access would be primarily through the laneway. So a wider laneway would be necessary to facilitate that access, and it would act sort of as, kind of like a road, like a little local road for just those people. So it's in there with the intent for that flexibility in the future should it be needed. But it's not recommended that all laneways in the future are 6 meters wide.
Although, just speaking further, a lot of the lanes have 3 utilities in them, so they'll have sanitary, storm, and gas. And so narrow lanes don't accommodate installation of utilities. Very challenging. And that's why most lanes are more commonly 6 meters, 4.5 or 6 meters wide in other communities. We do have our old lanes that are 3 meters wide, but yeah, the standard is always to go with a wider lane.
Go for it.
Everybody good?
Yep, go ahead.
I think I missed the one that we are all most thankful about, and that's the recommendation to never have a street light here ever. Thank you.
traffic light.
Traffic light. Thank you for that. We never want one ever, and
That was
thanks
good.
for that one. Yeah.
No, you never, I do that, I'm an expert on traffic signals, and you do not want one.
We don't need one or one.
You do not want one.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So,
It's in the report.
yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then my only other thing is, so on a, say on a collector road, I think we had them at 40 kilometers an hour or something. So if we had a collector, just because it's a collector road doesn't mean it needs to be 40 the whole way. It could be 40 and then 30 and then 40 again or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, that's a maximum.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're welcome to set it lower.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have on that. So there's, so that was a lot of feedback, and I'm wondering whether we want to have staff come back, like go away with you and make those, any changes from that and then bring it back, or how do we want to move forward?
Did we suggest many changes? I'm just wondering.
Mike, I'm not aware of any significant changes. Happy to tweak the report as council sees fit, but
I think
So
the,
it's-
the only thing I would like to see changed is the priorities. I don't agree with the priorities.
Could I speak on that?
Yeah.
One of the main things that we heard in public outreach was a safe east-west connection to the school.
Yeah.
And so that's why Maryport came up. What I'll say about it is, if you built Maryport, it would provide that connection, which is something the community really wanted. And you would gain the initial experience of doing the treatment types. I think whatever you're going to do on Camp Road, Rob and I went and walked it today and looked at it. Whatever you're going to do on Camp Road is going to follow the same suite of tools that's you're going to use on Maryport. So it could be a good test case. And if you wanted to, there's nothing that precludes you from also doing some of it to Maryport right away too. If you're going to have a crew out and you're going to pay to have a concrete object brought in and you're going to paint the road, you might as well just do it. You know, they're already here. Mobilization's part of the cost, right? Yeah, to Camp Road. So it doesn't preclude it anyway, and it would give you the opportunity to try it. And there might be other things that could happen too with Camp Road that would be quick wins. So I would, it is council's discretion. But I will say that we did hear from the community that east-west connection we heard very loudly that was needed.
Yeah, and I agree. It's absolutely needed. So is Kendall. So is Cumberland Road. So I mean, that's the challenge with this, with prioritizing like this, is that we're putting something in front of something else, and I think danger is our most certain priority, and no one's complained about Maryport being a dangerous street. And so I think we address the,
Transportation for students have been a huge complaint for.
yeah, and we've done a ton of work up around the school to make those safe routes possible.
But he's
so-
talking about getting everybody across the village, like through Fairfield
Yeah.
Village. Like,
Yep. And I'm, okay, yeah.
I don't necessarily think that that's not a priority in my.
I think
I just don't think it's the first priority.
I think they're all priorities. I think what we heard though from the public was it was one of their top priorities. But that's not to say council can change those priorities. That's really your discretion, like Andy said. So I mean, come budget time, if the priority isn't Maryport, but it's another street like Camp, then staff are happy to work with council on making that a priority.
Can we approve this in principle and then make changes as because I can see if we should look at this in relation to the OCP too.
Yeah.
So have an approval in principle, and then we can make changes afterwards. I mean, especially around the finer details. I guess that will come up at budgeting time, which ones we want to fund right off the bat.
Okay. Councillor Tarian, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, similar to Neil's comments, I'm personally, I'm happy to accept the report as it stands. And then maybe we can make a motion tonight even to have staff bring us back some immediate quick fixes that are low cost and that we can implement in the next even couple of months by the end of summer kind of thing. A small temporary roundabout somewhere on Maryport, a pinch point or some kind of a treatment at the entrance to Camp Road, a couple of new little signs saying what we expect from people in these areas, and that sort of and start addressing these things in the very near term.
I think Rob might like to speak to that.
Yep.
I mean, it becomes a budget item, so we'd have to see if we have funding available. But definitely something, we can task our engineering tech with looking into further.
Awesome. Okay.
And I'd just like to say, so if that is what you would like, that would be a great resolution to make.
Yeah.
So that it's clear to us, because otherwise it might just,
Yeah.
it would be helpful just to have it clear in a resolution.
Do you want to move that, Councillor Tarian?
Yes, please. I'd like to move that our engineer bring forward some quick fix ideas for both Maryport and Camp Road that we can implement in the near future.
Whilst also supporting the master transportation.
Can we make that Maryport, Kendall, and Camp Road? Because Kendall is also. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Okay, and then, do you want to move the rest of the recommendation as well?
I can if I had it here in front of me.
That's okay, somebody
Let
else
me-
can do that part. Let's vote on the first one, because he's doing it
I'll
as,
second the first one.
all in favor?
And then
Assuming the mover is
I'll
in
move
favor.
that council approve the transportation master plan in principle with review when the OCP comes up or is completed.
Okay.
Is that okay? Oh, just
in principle, I feel like staff might not like that one.
no? Okay. Is that I mean, it's not.
I'm no professional, but I'm not.
The idea is that it's, you know, we
I get your
follow
idea.
up on it.
I
so
know what you're trying to do.
I don't
for
know how
sure.
the wording would go with that, but
Don't know if
that,
Well, I
Robert's
think I have a
rules.
question for the consultant then. So how does this become a living document? Like, how do we make changes to it if we decide after the OCP and the zoning bylaw are updated that we want to make changes to this? Would we,
I mean, do your rules allow you to just make an addendum and
Okay.
just like staple it on the back?
yeah?
You know,
okay,
like change
Yeah.
page X, Y, and Z change to, you know, whatever?
Yes. Okay, perfect. Thanks.
okay.
Go ahead.
Well, if it's that
Now I'm
easy.
trying to figure out how to word this.
So there's a recommendation there, you could
Yeah.
just do that one.
Okay, I'll recommend that, I'd like to move the council approve the transportation master plan.
Okay, and can you also move that we receive the presentation that we already had?
Is that there? Oh, yes, and I'll move that council receive the presentation by Andy Kading, Cedar Engineer and Engineering Practice Lead Watt Consulting Group on the Transportation Master Plan.
Second.
Seconder? That's a seconder. All in favor? Awesome. Thank you so much. That was
Thank you.
a big project for us, and obviously we're nerding out on it like crazy. So that was great. Thank you. Okay, now we are on to mobile vending regulations. Come on up, Seamus.
All right. Hello again, Mayor and Council. So, purpose of this report is to present a summary of feedback we received during our engagement proceedings for the Mobile Vending Regulations Review project. So just for background, we've been working on a project since November of last year on updating the village's mobile vending regulations. And of course, mobile vending are things like food trucks that you see from time to time in the community. So we did some background research at the start of the project in November and December. Council this January endorsed an engagement plan in response to those initial research proceedings. So we've been in the background working on that engagement strategy. So we've hosted the engagement proceedings on Connect Cumberland, the village's engagement portal. And we had a survey open from February to March of this year, which garnered 44 responses. We sent direct invites to the business community as well as mobile vendors that we have contact information for. And we sent out specific surveys tailored to each group's interests. So we sent out a survey tailored to the business community, survey tailored to the mobile vending community, as well, of course, a general survey for the public to provide their comments as well. Of the 44 responses, we received 8 responses from storefront businesses directly, as well as 2 mobile vendors. And we also worked with municipal departments such as our operations team, parks, finance, as well for their comments on mobile vending as well. So overall, the feedback from the survey, respondents were happy that mobile vendors were present in Cumberland and wanted to see them remain. Some issues did get flagged though for our consideration for new regulations. The major one was protection of the environment and certain surrounding areas. So respondents had questions about waste discharge. So where's garbage going? Where are grease, fats from food vendors going? As well as garbage collection from around mobile vendors. So do they have enough garbage cans? Where's the garbage going from people who are attending each vendor? So those were some of the questions we received in regards to the environment. And the other primary concern we received was siting and access. So folks raised concerns and comments about how mobile vendors can impact the access to properties or access to lands nearby. Other than that, there were a few other minor considerations. Our 30-meter buffer, folks were quite happy with that as a method to balance competition between neighboring businesses. Some comments came in that mobile vendors should have a higher business license fee, which our finance team will be reviewing as part of a business licensing bylaw review. Folks also flagged mobile vendors being charged for utilities. However, if a mobile vendor sited on a private property, this is already being captured as part of that business's utility fees. And there's quite a bit of interest in mobile vendors being operated in parks. That is outside the scope of this review, but any standards that come up as part of our project will translate to future park mobile vending. So overall, the comments were people were pretty happy with the mobile vendors in the community, but did flag those comments about environmental and siting for our consideration. We did take some recommendations through the Advisory Planning Commission last month, just for their review and comment, and we came up with a few recommendations to consider as part of our regulatory review. So the first one was a waste discharge plan, where we outline how all waste streams generated by the mobile vendor will be dealt with. So where are they taking those fats? Where's gray water being dumped? Those kind of questions. That mobile vendors are to provide waste containers in line with their waste discharge plan. So they'll be outlining in the waste discharge plan what kind of garbage they expect to be getting and how they'll be dealing with it. And in that plan, they'll outline what garbage cans or refuse cans they'll be providing as part of their operation. Siting and access, so we'll be prohibiting queue areas to encroach on neighboring lands and sidewalks, so just trying to keep things a little bit more clustered together. We'll also look at implementing a 1 meter setback from all property lines, again, just as a measure to help keep the mobile vendors contained on an individual property. And we'll also avoid issuing a license. We won't issue a license if a property can't meet its residential parking requirement. So if a mobile vendor set up on a mixed-use property, for example, and it took up a parking spot from a residential use on property, we wouldn't be able to issue a business license unless the operator can prove that all the parking requirements can be met in that regard. We'll also be retaining the 30-meter buffer with no changes. As noted, we'll consider a business license fee class for mobile vendors as part of that finance review. And the APC also provided a comment on generator standards, specifically prohibiting external combustion engines. This came up as a climate change mitigation idea, as well as helping manage noise. However, I note that current mobile vending technology doesn't have quite the level of technology need to run as complete net zero. I did some research and I did find one food truck in the United States that was completely green on batteries with solar. So the infrastructure and the technology isn't there yet, but this might be a better conversation maybe in 10 years when battery technologies come a long way. But in the medium term, if we do look at putting mobile vendors in parks, we can certainly look at providing hydro tie-ins to help try and take some of that load off of fossil fuel generating generators. So it's a bit of a longer term goal, but there may be some implementations in the medium term to consider. So for next step, staff will start working on bylaw amendments this summer, but we're hoping to test out some of the regulations as applications come in. So under our current business bylaw requirements, we can ask for additional supporting information. And what we're planning on doing is drafting up a checklist that we'll be essentially using on some of our forthcoming mobile vending applications as they come in, just to see how these standards are implemented, just to see if there's any unintended consequences or issues we may not foreseen with these regulations. But yeah, overall, that's all there is for my report, and I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Council? Councillor Therrien?
Yeah, just more of a comment, and it has to do with the food trucks near. Last year we had a food truck that was parked very near Village Park, and Village Park at times sort of became a de facto seating area for that food truck, which kind of then limits the use of the park for, people that just want to go and chill out. And like, I'm happy to see people, if they want to carry their takeout down the street a little bit and eat it at the picnic table, that's great. But for it to sort of become a total seating area, I wasn't a big fan of that. I'm much happier to see them in their new location this year.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if the regulations are going to capture anything like that.
I think that setback captures it, hey?
That's correct, yes. And having that provision to have mobile vendors not basically encroach onto neighboring properties. So if we observe a line for a mobile vendor on another property, that we could point to that if in bylaw enforcement action. So you're right, the setback would help mitigate that issue. And we did receive a few comments in the survey regarding mobile vendors using public spaces as such.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The only thing I had, and I don't know whether this is in our power, it's regarding the waste streams. So, I think a lot of the concern around waste is that people go to the food truck and then they're dumping all their garbage in our public garbage can. So I appreciate that having the waste containers on site with the food truck, but also can we require them to be composting and where they can removing that from this? Like, how do we manage that? And also the plastics.
Yeah.
The plastics.
Yeah, and we did review this at the APC as well. So one of the comments that came up is that initially we did want to see things like prescription of a recycling bin or a compost bin. But one of the comments that came up is that some businesses may not need a recycling bin, for example. Like if they were selling like, say, trinkets, for example, we don't want to necessarily lock someone into providing a bunch of cans they might not necessarily need. But that being said, and it does raise a good point too, is requiring the compost. Like there was some consideration at the APC where there wasn't a commercial compost collection scheme yet. But that's what we're hoping with this, by having them outline what their waste streams are going to be in the waste discharge plan. Then we can say, okay, you'll need a recycling bin because we see you're going to be selling returnables, or hey, there's some general refuse. You'll have to provide a general garbage can. So that's what we hope to capture with the waste discharge plan, is those bins, but also not be too prescriptive to provide something that might not make sense for each individual vendor.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So there's a recommendation there, council?
I'll move that council receive the mobile vending regulations, public engagement summary, and analysis staff report, and engagement report, mobile vending regulations.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, by-election, appointment of chief election officer. I think that's you, Rachel.
That would be me. So we've started planning for a fall by-election that was triggered by Councillor Kettler's resignation earlier in June. And the by-elections and elections, of course, are heavily guided by the Local Government Act. And we also have a election procedures bylaw in Cumberland. And we use those tools to guide us with these processes. And the thing that kicks off the date for a by-election is the appointment of the chief election officer and a deputy chief election officer. And it's required that we have the by-election within 80 days of that appointment. And we're recommending that that myself as the corporate officer be appointed as chief election officer, and Michelle has stepped up to be the deputy in case something happens to me. And if I go on vacation, she'll be there to help out.
I can relate.
Nap.
Yeah. And as part of the planning, we've already secured the voting place at Buchanan Hall. The quilters have really nicely agreed to move upstairs for the day, which is really kind of them. And advanced voting days we'll hold in the council chamber, which we didn't do at the last general election, but that was our practice previously, so hopefully people won't be too confused between the two spaces. We have 2 advanced voting days, and those dates will be September 11th and 18th for advance, and September 21st for general voting day. The 2 advanced voting are Wednesdays, and general voting is on a Saturday, and that's pretty standard for local government. We've prepared our nomination notices to be published in the next couple weeks for candidates, and we're preparing the candidate nomination packages right now for availability sort of mid-late July, so people can get excited about handing in their papers and becoming a candidate for office. The nomination period will be August 6th to August 16th, when we'll receive those papers at the office. And just as an aside, just to note that the provincial election is going to be the following month in October, so we're clear of that dates, and their advanced voting started on October 10th, so there is a bit of separation between the 2 elections. We're working right now on determining whether we'll do a hand count election or use machines. Machines are quite costly. There's definite benefits when you have a larger election to use the machines, but for just a one race, one candidate, we could use the hand count, the old-timey method of hand counting ballots.
England style.
Definitely more cost-effective, but there's some downsides to that too. We wouldn't be able to use the accessible reader that we had last time for people with visual impairment. That was a nice tool to have, but it would come at a cost. But we're still looking at options. We haven't made a final decision on that. I also wanted to mention for promotion, we did hear at the last election with seniors coming into the office, they couldn't find information on candidates and they didn't know who to vote for. We heard that quite a number of times. So we've asked the Recreation Department 50-plus adult social club to host a non-partisan meet and greet event for any candidate that wants to participate, just to sit down with seniors in the community and have one-on-one chats with those folks. And the adult social club facilitator will advertise that and promote that in the community. And then on the other hand, we'll also try and promote sort of the 18-year-old to young vote as well and try and get those folks up too. Financial implications, we're asking for a budget of $20,000. The last election the general election was done for $23,000. It gives us some flexibility depending on how many candidates we get. Typically you get more turnout with a little more competition out there. It draws out people, so we have to staff voting places with more staff. But if it doesn't look like there's going to be a huge turnout and there's not a lot of chatter out there about the by-election, we might sort of reduce staff a little bit. So that's kind of a wait and see, but we just want to make sure that we're funded adequately to make sure that we have the best service possible for the community. And the last thing I want to add, quite a number of people have asked what happens if we don't have enough candidates, and I did look that up. What happens is the local government would have to appoint individuals to the vacant seats.
What?
It's a very rare thing in BC. I actually had to look up sort of news media, and it's happened twice in the last, I think,
And council has to agree, obviously.
Yeah, the council would have to vote on it and appoint. And it happened in Valemont, which is a very small community, I think, east of Prince George, and in Vallis a few years
So we just need one candidate.
You just
We
need one
at least
candidate.
one. And then if there's only one,
Yeah.
do we still hold an election? What?
No, that
It
candidate
just
would
gets
be acclaimed.
acclaimed at the end of the nomination period.
That's right.
Okay, and the other question I had was around the seniors event. That would be open to the public if other people wanted to come, or is it just for that, like, club?
Yeah, I
thing?
don't think we would exclude anyone, but I think it's
Let's just
geared
get
for,
an all
it's
candidates
targeted
meeting
to
going
them.
on then.
it's geared for
We
seniors.
have to do it.
If we get candidates,
Yeah.
yeah.
Geared for seniors. that
Yeah,
wouldn't-
okay. Okay, so if we get a bunch of candidates, we'll have to get somebody
Sorry,
to
so
run
the
us.
10 days, is that because it's only a by-election?
No, that's normal for any election.
Really?
It's 10-day period. It's just when you can drop off your papers at the office.
Right, I just thought
Just
it
the
was,
nomination
I just thought it
period.
was 30th, that's all.
Just a question. Do you have any stats as to how many people participate in by-elections compared to a normal election, or is it too
Less.
varied? I'd imagine it'd be quite a bit less, but
I just, anecdotal, I've done, I think, one or two, I think, in the past in other communities, and it's definitely less. It just
Yeah.
doesn't have the turnout. But hopefully Cumberland has very high voter turnout. Like we were at almost 50%, which is incredibly high for a community. So we might have,
Everybody will just be back to school, everybody be on it.
Right?
Yeah, paying attention to stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll try and promote it as best we can.
yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Bring it on, Cumberland.
Okay, there's a recommendation there.
I'll move the council
Sure.
appoint Rachel Park.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead, Troy. If you like.
I'll move the council appoint Rachel Parker, corporate officer, as chief election officer, and appoint Michelle Mason, chief administrative officer, as deputy chief election officer. and that council approve the expenditure of $20,000 for the 2024 by-election from the General Financial Stabilization Fund, and direct staff to bring forward an amendment to the adopted 2024-2028 financial plan bylaw to reflect this expenditure.
Second.
And all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Good thing. Get your papers in, people. Okay, so next is ACET geothermal. So I just wanted to follow up because we had our PhD student come up and do some investigating. So he's done his first visit up in the village, and the report talks about all the things we all did together, including Miners Memorial, and meeting with our geologist, mining geologist guys and gals. And so if no one has questions, there's a recommendation there. If people have questions, I can try and answer them. Oh, and so there's in the next steps, there was a suggestion of putting a funding application into NRCan. That application or expression of interest has gone in. It's not the full application. If we get to the second stage, then it'll likely come back to us for more input. And there it is.
And yeah, and what would what is the expression of interest? What if we can get funding from these folks? What are we doing with the funding?
We're going to drill holes and test
Oh,
the
okay.
temperature of the water and the quality of the water. So we need to know what's in the water, whether it's clean or whether there's other bad nasties in there,
Okay.
how much methane is in there, and also the temperature of the water. So we're hoping that it'll pay for that.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Move the council receive the ACET geothermal project update report for information.
Seconder?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is also carried. And now there's council member monthly reports. Any questions on those?
Crickets.
I'm good.
Thought I submitted mine.
It's fine. No questions. I mean,
It was too late to get in the package,
Okay.
but I read it,
Okay.
so that's good. You're getting closer and closer.
I actually did the report. Okay. I'll get it in.
sure you did go. So did I.
I had a lot going on.
So did I.
So there's a recommendation to receive those reports.
Move proceed.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. And then we have our, we thought we'd approve the municipal ticket information amendment
Just keeps
bylaw,
coming back.
but this is actually formal adoption. It's
For
like the
reals.
last stage of
For
all
real
the
this time.
stages.
Well, then I will move that we adopt the municipal ticket information amendment bylaw number 1212-2024.
Second.
All in favor?
There we go.
And that's unanimous as well. Notices, motions, and announcements, please do check the website to make sure these things are actually happening when I'm telling you they're happening, because things change. Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee is July 17th at 9:30 a.m. in council chambers. Board of Variance is July 17th in council chambers. Heritage Committee is July 18th at 4 p.m. in council chambers. And that's it. Questions? Does anyone have a question from the audience while we wait for the reams of questions coming in online? Come on up and speak into a mic. You may sit or stand.
Only I laugh at the reams. I think that I'm part of the reams of questions that have come in is why I laughed.
Fair.
Yeah. So it's been a busy couple of days as your new favorite pen pal. Sorry for all of the emails. I hope that they can consolidate into one really important message that I'd like to bring forth in light of the Master Transportation Plan Transportation Master Plan. I was on Andy's workshops. I really appreciate all of the work that's been done towards the transportation plan. It's so many steps in the right direction, but Camp Road has been forgotten. And luckily, quote unquote, we were reminded on Friday night by a 80-kilometer, I swear to God, speeding car that was going on the way. We're all a little bit still fraught with the effects of that. And so I've written, and then I was reminded that this council meeting was going to talk about the transportation plan. So it's all timely, it's all beautiful. I respect that Vicky does not want to appear to be steering this, but I really value your experience as a member of a family on Camp Road too, Vicky, so I don't want you to recuse yourself. And my question, I think they've been answered. I did email two. One was, why was Camp Road not prioritized? There's a lot of priorities in the village, I get it. And the second one is, could it be prioritized? So I think both of them have just been kind of answered in the last hour and a half that I've been sitting here. I wanted to add a couple of things though. One, just in light of what we were talking about there, if, for example, we do a lot of those things that are in the master transportation plan right now. I have that feeling that once people get through the rural part of Cumberland, now let's get to the lake, woo! It's just going to make Camp Road even worse as a place where people think that they can get to the lake from, because we still have Google Apps or whatever it is that say that's the route. And these drunk kids from Campbell River on Friday night also thought that was the way to the lake. All respect to Councillor Otarian, if you wanted Camp Road to be a through road to get those things all in the same basket, that would be bananas. There are no sidewalks, there are no setbacks, there are few driveways, so there are cars all over that road, even parked in the middle of it. I think halfway up you'll see the camper that's been out in the middle of the road. So I have no idea how you would make that an actual thoroughfare to the lake and still make it possible for people to live there.
But I'm sure he's talking about just about a path.
Anyway, I don't know if I'm speaking for anybody else here, but I think that's just all that I wanted to take your time with, and you can read my many emails.
Thank you, Heather. Councillor Tarian, did you want to respond?
Yes, please. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding.
Sure.
I
Okay.
don't want
Thank
any
God it
cars
was a
going through
misunderstanding.
there.
Thank God.
I meant it simply as a biking and walking corridor,
100%. Yeah.
heading out towards that end.
I personally highly endorse that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. No, sorry for the misunderstanding.
No, that's okay.
No. I don't want to open up the barricade
Yeah,
at the end
that would
at
be
all.
hellish.
That is not in the
Good.
cards at all.
Thank you. Certainly the Jumbo's Cabin disc golf course, but Sutton Road parking lot by the Yellow Gate. Yeah. I also get killed there almost twice daily. Yeah. So thank you all for what you do.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Any online? There's quite a few emails with questions received earlier today. Some of them may have been answered already. I'll just read them out. How were prior concerns about speed and requests from the residents of Camp Road section of Dunsmuir Avenue, where there are no sidewalks, no setbacks, few driveways, meaning cars park in the road, and lots of children, incorporated into the plan's priorities? And if they weren't, why were these concerns not on the priority list? And could the consultants be asked to look at the Camp Road area and suggest a way forward in terms of speed control? So we'll talk about that at budget time, what we can fit in there, or if staff gets back to us prior to budget time on priorities, we would look at it then. Okay. Similar questions. What actions will council take to ensure the visibility of the regulatory and advisory signage on Camp Road? Yeah. What actions will council take to reduce the incidences of speeding on Camp Road? All the things in the shared road concept, I think, will do the trick. I mean, I pray to God it will do the trick. Oh, there's quite a few questions in this one. These are similar. I can read them out.
Asked if it's in with council's transportation plan budget to add signage or do bulk order of speed bumps. Speak up. Oh, sorry. So budget for speed traffic calming.
Right. So again, that would come up through the budget process. The transportation master plan does not recommend speed bumps. There may be cases for raised crosswalks or other things, but it looks like we're going to use other methods of traffic calming, which may be cheaper and quicker than speed bumps. Councillor Tyrion's got a snake in his.
Sorry, just had to change locations, losing my battery.
Oh, that's okay.
And there's a few more emails here, but it doesn't look like there's questions.
And did all those emails go to us?
Oh, I've lost all my audio.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear us, Troy?
Are you back? Are we back?
You guys have muted yourselves.
Uh-oh.
That's me. I muted me. I was trying to mute you.
Can you hear us now?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
There's no questions with that one. Oh, yes, these were copied to some of council members, not all council members. But they seem to be more comments than questions.
Okay.
So those will go in your weekly reader.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it.
Great. Thank you. So then we're on to a closed portion
Move
recommendation.
that council close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, information that is prohibited, or information that, if it were presented in a document, would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information Act, Protection of Privacy Act.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of going to closed?
Okay.
And that's carried. Thanks for coming, you guys.
for coming.